When you've known someone as long as I've known Tyler, you start to think you know everything about them. Every dumb habit, every awkward middle school phase, every terrible haircut, they're all archived somewhere in your brain. So when he said the words, I actually laughed. Not because I thought it was funny, but because it didn't compute. We were 23, both back in our hometown, for a couple weeks after graduation. He'd moved to Denver, I'd ended up in Boston. But for those 2 weeks, we were back in the house he grew up in, pretending like we weren't slowly turning into real adults. We'd done this almost every summer since we were 13. Sleepovers that turned into late-night deep talks, hours of Mario Kart, dumb food challenges, and crashing on opposite sides of the same couch. But this night was different. We were in his room. It was past 1 a.m., the lights low, a summer thunderstorm rumbling in the distance. I was on the bed, half scrolling, half listening to him ramble about some girl he went on a date with, until his voice trailed off and he got quiet. Weirdly quiet. I looked up. "You good?" He was standing by the door, fingers hovering near the lock. "I ever tell you something?" he asked. I shrugged. "You've told me a lot of things." His eyes flicked toward me, hesitant. "No, like something I've never told anyone." That made me sit up a little. I tossed my phone onto the nightstand. "Okay." He didn't say anything at first. He just turned the lock on his bedroom door with a soft click, and the sound made my stomach tighten in a way I couldn't explain. Then he turned around. "I've never been with a guy," he said, like it had been on the tip of his tongue for years. "But if I ever did, I always thought it'd be you." I stared at him. My mouth opened, but no sound came out. And like an idiot, I laughed. Not a big laugh, more like one of those awkward, "what is happening right now?" sounds you make when your brain is buffering. "What?" he asked, his face suddenly red. "You think I'm joking?" I don't know," I said honestly. "Are you?" Tyler ran a hand through his hair and looked away. "Forget it." No, hold on," I said, swinging my legs over the side of the bed. I wasn't expecting that." He leaned against the door, arms crossed, not looking at me. "Yeah, well, me either." We sat there in silence for a few beats, thunder rolling in the distance, the kind that shakes the windows just slightly. "Tyler," I started, but didn't know how to finish. He finally looked up. "Look, I know what this sounds like, but I've been thinking about it for a while. I'm not saying I'm gay. I don't know what I am. But I trust you, and I keep thinking, if I ever tried it, I'd want it to be with someone who wouldn't make me feel like shit after." That last part hit me harder than I wanted it to. "Why now?" I asked quietly. He shrugged. "Because I keep lying to myself, and because you're leaving again next week, and because I can't stop wondering what it'd be like." He walked toward the bed, slow, like he was giving me time to stop him. I didn't. He sat down beside me, close, but not too close. "You don't have to say anything. I just needed you to know." I turned to face him. "So you've thought about this?" His lips twitched into something that wasn't quite a smile. "More than I should have." That silence came back again, heavier this time. I could feel the heat off his skin, the nervous tension practically vibrating off him. I hadn't touched him, hadn't said yes or no, but the air between us felt electric. I should have been the one with questions. But all I could think was, how long has he been holding this in? And what happens now? The air in the room felt thick, like the storm outside had crept in with us. I was trying to process what Tyler had just said, what he had just said, and honestly, my brain was doing cartwheels. I wanted to ask a million questions, but mostly, I just wanted to hold still. Like if I moved too fast, the moment would shatter. "Okay," I said finally, voice low and a little shaky. "So you want to try? With me?" Tyler's eyes flicked to mine, and there was this vulnerability there that I hadn't seen before, like he was a kid again, scared but hopeful all at once. "Yeah," he whispered. "If you want to." There it was, the invitation, the question hanging in the air between us. I swallowed hard, the nerves hitting like a wave. "Ty, this is huge, like really huge." He nodded, biting his bottom lip. "I know. I'm not looking to mess up what we have. I just want to know. Want to know what it's like. Want to see if there's something more beneath the surface of everything we'd always ignored. I took a breath. We don't have to do anything you're not ready for. No pressure. He gave a small, grateful smile, then reached over to run his fingers lightly along my arm. The touch was electric, soft, careful, like he was testing the waters. Do you want to? God, the question made my chest tight. I nodded. Yeah, I do. He shifted closer, and the room seemed to shrink around us. Our eyes locked, and all the years of silent glances, hidden feelings, and late-night jokes suddenly felt like they were leading to this moment. Tyler's hand moved to cup my cheek gently. His thumb brushed over my skin in slow, tentative strokes. "Tell me if you want me to stop," he said, voice barely above a whisper. I shook my head. "Don't stop." That's when he leaned in, close enough that I could feel his breath on my lips, warm and hesitant. The kiss started soft, exploratory, like we were both navigating unknown territory. But then it deepened, became urgent, like years of unspoken things finally crashing through all at once. I tangled my fingers in his hair, pulling him closer. The storm outside crashed, lightning illuminating the room in flashes. But all I could focus on was Tyler. His lips, his hands, the way he looked at me like I was the only thing that mattered. For the first time, it wasn't just friendship. It was something more. Something raw. Something real. The kiss broke, not because we wanted it to, but because the thunder outside seemed to shout a warning neither of us could ignore. We just stared at each other, breathless, the space between us charged with something new, something fragile and exciting. Tyler's hand was still on my cheek, his fingers trembling just a little. I could feel the heat radiating from him, and I realized my own hands were shaking too. "This is crazy," he whispered. I smiled, the nerves melting away a bit. "Yeah, but good crazy." He laughed softly, the sound low and warm, and then he shifted, moving to sit closer, this time closer enough that our legs brushed under the covers. I wasn't sure if he realized how much that small touch did to me, the way his skin felt against mine, soft and electric. "Are you sure?" I asked again, because I needed to hear it. "About all of this, about us." Tyler's eyes didn't waver. "I've never been more sure of anything." The vulnerability in his voice made my heart squeeze. Here was the guy I'd known forever, finally stepping into a world he'd been scared to explore, and he was doing it with me. We talked then, really talked, about fears, about what this meant, about how neither of us wanted to lose the friendship we'd built. It was messy and awkward and perfectly real. And then, without a word, he reached out and took my hand. His grip was firm, grounding me. I followed his lead, letting myself sink into the moment, into the feeling of finally being seen. Not as just a friend or a roommate or a guy who shares pizza on weekends, but as someone who mattered. The night stretched on like that, quiet but full of promise. And as the storm raged outside, inside that small room, we started something neither of us had planned, but both of us secretly wanted. The storm had settled into a steady rhythm, rain tapping softly against the window, but inside Tyler's room, the world felt like it had narrowed down to just the two of us. We sat close, legs tangled under the blankets, hands still entwined as if neither of us wanted to let go. I could feel the heat from his body, and it was more than just the summer air. It was the electricity between us, new, raw, but unmistakably real. Tyler's eyes met mine again, searching, vulnerable. "Is this weird?" he asked, quietly, like asking if the sky was blue. I shook my head, even though my heart was pounding like a drum. "No, it feels right." He gave a relieved smile, and for the first time, he didn't try to hide who he was or what he wanted. Slowly, hesitantly, he leaned in again, this time his lips grazing mine softly, testing the waters. I matched him, letting the kiss grow. Deeper now, but still gentle, like we were both learning the language of touch. His hands moved to my shoulders, sliding down my arms with a tenderness that made my skin flush. It wasn't about rushing or pressure. It was about connection, trust. When his fingers found the hem of my shirt, I froze for a split second before letting him pull it up and over my head. The cool air hit my skin, but it didn't compare to the warmth that spread through me. I reached out to do the same, slowly sliding his shirt off, revealing the lean muscle beneath. We were careful, like this was sacred territory, not to be rushed or broken. There was an honesty in the way we explored each other, a kind of reverence that made the whole night feel like a first chapter, instead of a one-time thing. When he finally pressed his body against mine, skin against skin, it was like coming home. There was no awkwardness, no shame, just the two of us, discovering something real and new. And in that moment, I realized that this wasn't about labels or expectations. It was about being brave enough to try something that scared us, and about doing it together. The warmth of Tyler's skin against mine was something I never wanted to forget. The storm outside had softened to a gentle drizzle, but inside the room, everything felt magnified. The softness of his lips, the nervous flicker in his eyes, the way his breath hitched when our bodies pressed closer. We moved slowly, like we were both learning a delicate dance without a rehearsal. His hands were tentative but sure, exploring with a mix of curiosity and reverence that took my breath away. Every touch felt like a question, and every sigh was an answer. "Tell me if it's too fast," Tyler whispered against my skin. I shook my head, heart pounding. "You're perfect." The words surprised me, even as they slipped out. But it was true. He was perfect, flawed and human and breathtakingly brave. We kissed more, hands roaming now with growing confidence, but still careful not to rush. Every time his fingers traced over my skin, I felt a spark, electric and alive. He pulled back just enough to look me in the eyes, searching for permission, reassurance. "You sure?" he asked again, voice barely above a whisper. I nodded, unable to stop the smile that tugged at my lips. He grinned, a mix of relief and excitement flooding his face. That night, we explored each other with a tenderness I hadn't expected, but desperately needed. It wasn't about performance or expectations. It was about connection, about trust, about finally breaking down the walls we'd both built over years of silence. The moments weren't perfect, but they were ours, messy, vulnerable, and real. When we finally lay tangled in the aftermath, breaths slow and hearts pounding, Tyler's head found its place on my chest, and I held him like I never wanted to let go. "I don't know what comes next," he murmured. I smiled, pressing a kiss to his temple. "Neither do I, but we'll figure it out, together." And for the first time in a long time, I believed it. Morning light filtered softly through the curtains, casting a gentle glow over the room. I woke first, tangled in the sheets and in Tyler's arms, and for a moment, I just lay there, letting the warmth of the night settle into me. He was still asleep, chest rising and falling steadily, hair tousled in that way I'd always loved but never dared to admit. I traced lazy circles on his back, my mind spinning with everything that had happened. The words, the touches, the silence between us that had suddenly said everything. The panic I expected to feel wasn't there. Instead, there was a quiet calm, like the storm had passed and left behind something new. Something fragile but full of promise. Tyler stirred, eyes fluttering open. He blinked a few times, as if trying to place where he was and what had changed. "Morning," I whispered, voice hoarse. He gave a small smile, sleepy but real. "Morning." We lay there, the silence between us no longer heavy or awkward, but comfortable, like a shared secret that didn't need words. "So," he said, after a while, "about last night." I cut him off with a soft kiss, pressing my forehead to his. "It was perfect." He laughed, the sound light and genuine. "Yeah, I think I might be glad I trusted you." "Me too," I said honestly. We spent the morning like that. Slow, unhurried, talking about everything and nothing. About what it meant, what we wanted, and how scared we both were. But underneath it all was this new layer of something real, something honest. I realized then that it wasn't just about the physical, about trying something new. It was about finding a person who could hold all the messy parts of you and still want to stay. Tyler squeezed my hand, and I knew that whatever came next, we'd face it together. The days after that night were complicated. Not in a bad way, but in that strange, in-between place where everything is new and uncharted. Tyler and I went back to our usual routines, but nothing felt quite the same. There was an undercurrent now, a current of something more that pulled at us every time we crossed paths. We tried to play it cool, cracking jokes and acting like nothing had changed, but the lingering touches, the stolen glances, and the way our conversations sometimes dipped into places they hadn't before said otherwise. One afternoon, we were sitting on the porch, sharing a beer in the fading sun, and Tyler looked over at me with that same nervous intensity. "Do you think we can keep this?" he asked quietly. I smiled, the corners of my eyes crinkling. "I want to, if you do." He nodded, relief flooding his face. "I do. I'm just scared. What if this messes everything up?" I reached out and bumped his shoulder. "Or what if it makes everything better?" He laughed, a little breathless. "Yeah, maybe." From that day on, we started to find a rhythm, a delicate balance between friendship and something more. We weren't in a rush, no grand declarations or labels. Just two guys figuring out what it meant to be more than friends. And honestly, that was enough. Because sometimes the best things start quietly, softly, without fanfare or expectation. Just two people, taking a chance, together. Weeks later, as summer slipped into early fall, Tyler and I sat side by side on that same porch, watching the leaves turn gold and amber. We'd settled into something neither of us had names for, but both felt deeply, something steady, real, and ours. I looked over at him, his profile bathed in the soft glow of the setting sun, and smiled. "Remember that night?" I asked. He chuckled. "How could I forget? I thought you were going to laugh me out of the room." "Almost did," I teased, nudging him gently. But then I realized I'd never been happier to be wrong. We sat in comfortable silence, the kind that only comes with time and trust. I thought about how far we'd come, from awkward roommates with unspoken feelings, to something that felt like the beginning of forever. Tyler turned to me, eyes bright and steady. "Thanks for taking a chance on me," he said softly. I reached out, intertwining my fingers with his. "Thanks for being brave enough to try." And in that moment, with the world quiet around us, I knew that sometimes the best things happen when you take a risk, when you open the door, when you trust, and when you find someone who makes the unknown feel like home. I've known Tyler since high school, not as best friends, but close enough. Roommates in college, partners in crime for late-night snack runs, occasional poker nights, and endless streams of sarcastic banter. He was that guy everyone assumed was straight without question. The golden boy jock, easygoing, always surrounded by girls, the kind of guy who got along with everyone and rarely let anyone in too deeply. And me? I was the quieter one, more into books and video games, content to sit on the sidelines and watch Tyler's life unfold like some effortless highlight reel. I'd been attracted to him for years, of course, quietly, secretly, like a locked drawer in the back of my mind I didn't want to open, because what if it was all just one-sided? But that night changed everything. It was a sticky summer evening. We'd just come back from a party a few blocks away. Nothing wild, mostly people catching up before we scattered for the summer. I was wiped out, ready to collapse into bed, but Tyler was restless, pacing the room like something was buzzing under his skin. "You good?" I asked, watching him flick his hands through his hair. He stopped and looked at me, like he was weighing whether to say something he'd been holding in for years. "I've got to tell you something," he said finally, voice low, like he was afraid of the words themselves. I nodded, curious but cautious. "Shoot!" He walked to his bedroom door, and before I could react, he flicked the lock, shutting it with a soft click. Then he turned around and looked at me, eyes wide, vulnerable. I've never been with a guy before. I blinked. For a moment, I thought it was a joke, but the seriousness in his face told me it wasn't. "Okay," I said, voice hoarse. "Go on." He swallowed hard. "I've been thinking about it, about what it would be like. And if I did, I'd want it to be with you." That hit me like a lightning bolt. I wanted to laugh. I wanted to run. I wanted to stay frozen in place forever. "Are you serious?" I managed. "Yeah," he said, stepping closer, his hands in his pockets, eyes on the floor. The air between us shifted, thick with a kind of electricity I'd never felt before. I wasn't sure what to say, or what to do. All I knew was that nothing would ever be the same again. Tyler's words hung in the room like a fragile secret, heavy and impossible to ignore. I could feel my heart thudding, loud enough that I was sure he could hear it too. The silence stretched between us, loaded with everything we'd never said before, everything we'd both been afraid to admit. I swallowed hard, trying to steady my breath. "Why me?" I finally asked, voice barely above a whisper. He looked up, eyes locking with mine. There was a vulnerability there I'd never seen before, raw and honest. "Because I trust you, and because I don't want to be alone in this." The honesty knocked the breath out of me. Tyler, the guy who'd always seemed so sure of everything, was just as scared as I was, maybe even more. I took a step closer, letting the nervousness settle into something warmer. "Are you sure? Like, really sure?" He nodded, fingers twitching at his sides, more than I've ever been about anything. It was surreal. The boy who'd been my roommate, my friend, the guy I'd admired from afar, was now standing inches away, sharing a part of himself he'd kept hidden for so long, and somehow it felt like a gift. "Okay," I said, voice steadying. "Let's talk. About everything. No rush." Tyler exhaled, a breath he'd been holding for years. "Yeah, I want that." We sat down on the edge of the bed, the storm outside providing a steady soundtrack. Words came slow at first, stumbling and awkward, but then we fell into rhythm, exploring fears, hopes, and what the future might look like. It wasn't perfect. There were moments of hesitation, moments when we both wanted to run, to pretend none of this was happening. But mostly, there was a quiet hope. Fragile, but real. And as the night deepened, so did our connection, two souls learning to trust and open up in a way neither had before. When Tyler reached out, his hand warm and steady in mine, I didn't pull away. Because sometimes, the scariest risks bring the greatest rewards.